Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Science of Fitness podcast. I've got a very exciting guest here today, a fellow podcastee, if you will, Shale Coranda. Hopefully I said that correctly.
Correctly,
mate.
yes.
Oh, beautiful.
I didn't actually introduce myself and my full name, so you did well there.
Beautiful. All right, well, that's great. That's a good start for us. So Shale runs a podcast called The Trail Kings, and an Instagram page and a couple of other things. You're also a fellow sort of enthusiast in the running realm.
Yep.
Probably a little bit more enthusiastic than I am, mate. And then you're also a practicing physiotherapist as well.
I am.
So there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm really excited. I think to kick things off, you're going to kick it off with just a little intro about yourself. Like, how did you get here? How did you become the Trail King host? Yeah. Do you run trails? Talk me through physio. Give me the whole rundown, mate.
Yeah, wow. So I've been a physio for, I think, 4 years now, in a private practice setting. That I was drawn to that straight away.
Yep.
Did my clinical rotations all in hospitals and hated it.
Yeah.
Nothing against, people who are quite unwell, but I think my passion was more working with people who are very physically active and have, really big, hairy, audacious goals, as Tim Franklin. Not sure if you know Timmy. That's his saying. So, really enjoyed working, with people, runners in particular, who were motivated to take on some big things. And then in terms of Trail Kings, that was an interesting thing. So it was initially started with one of my mates, and at Run Club, a couple of people used to just call us the Trail Kings because we both had big, long, glowing mullets, and we used to just, we were out the front just, hammering. And someone goes, "You boys are like the Trail Kings," and that's where the name kind of started. Yeah, we started the page.
It started as an Instagram page.
Started as an Instagram page, and we just post funny shit. Are we allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, go nuts.
Okay. We'd post funny stuff, and we kind of, got a few followers. People laughed and thought it was pretty funny. And then they said, "Oh, you should start a podcast." And at this stage, this is probably 2.5, 3 years ago, and not everyone had a podcast at this point. I think it's a bit oversaturated. Nothing against podcasters.
The irony of saying that on a podcast.
On a podcast.
As a podcast host yourself.
Yeah. Yep. So we're like, whatever, we'll do it. And we bought these really dodgy microphones and recorded 3 of the most horrific episodes ever. People listened. And then I kind of just went, nah, I actually really like doing this. Yeah. I'm going to splash the cash. I'm going to get, nice equipment. We're actually going to put some effort into it, and it started to grow. Yeah,
nice. And you're just about to launch episode 50?
Episode 50. So consistency is my enemy. Yeah. I've been a little bit up and down over the kind of last 2 years, but starting to get, now that we're growing heaps, starting to get a lot more consistent with episodes. So episode 50 is coming out this week. So it's crazy to think that I've, that's like 50 hours worth of content, but it's going really well. So I'm excited to see. Hopefully there's another 50 episodes there.
Mate, I have no doubt. I'm sure there is. So let's stay on the physio side of things. First and foremost, like as you said, you sort of did those clinical rotations. You sort of roll through hospital and see, oh, this isn't what I like, but you love the sort of, I guess, musculoskeletal side and getting people to move their body and do things that are challenging and not hopefully be held back by injuries. What about school and sports at school and that sort of thing? Is that where it really came from? Like, did you go in year 11 or 12, I'm making this decision, I want to be a physio, or what was that sort of story like?
I probably struggled with attention during school, and I was lucky enough that I did quite well. Like, I was naturally quite smart, but was terrible at studying, terrible at, assignments on time. And there was always that goal, like, hey, I'm smart, I'm going to do medicine. Yeah. And it kind of just got to me, and I was like, man, I don't think I, can sit down and focus. And, I think physio is that good blend where, there's a bit of that like medical side of things. And then I can be active and, be moving and keep myself busy. Yeah. And part of that as well was, yes, I was heavily involved in sport. So I played a lot of AFL, a lot of running, pretty much did everything possible. So I was heavily involved with the physios at the club and seeing like my own physios for injury. So there was that side of thing, definitely. So both of those things together led me to physio.
Yeah. How often does that medical doctor itch come up, and do you feel the need to scratch it, or have you really put that to bed?
Part of me would love to become a sports doctor. I think that's a good blend. Again, it's just the fear of having to go study again.
Yeah,
it's and hex debt too.
And then more hex, right? Yeah. And now it's at 7%, so it's even better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really funny because, I look at a lot of people in my industry, and, I'm strength and conditioning, exercise science.
Yeah.
The ambition up from here is clinical exercise physiology. And I was just young, dumb, and in a rush when I was like, oh, I'd go and do that extra year for ex-phys or finish ex science and go work straight away. Like, to me, I was like, oh, no, bugger the clinical stuff. I'm just going to get clients do this. In hindsight, probably should have done the clinical thing. But then I went and did my master's in high performance, and again, gave me less of a clinical access, but, kept studying anyway. So I probably could have just done the ex-phys. But it's funny because then you see an ex-phys, next step up from them is, oh, well, I'm going to go do physio.
Yeah.
And then next step up from physio is medicine. And then, there's always another step or a, greener bit of grass that you're looking at. But I quite often say to our interns and people coming in is, if you are doing something that you really like and you find you're enjoying it, like, don't chase the greener grass. We, in hindsight, have realized that preventative mechanisms are actually much better for our health than the reactive system that we kind of stumbled upon in the last 100 years. And so if we got practitioners that can help people stay more active, less injured, etc., I guess sports medicine has that realm.
Yeah.
But, a good physio can actually have much more of an influence on someone's overall health than potentially a good doctor, which is, I might get shut down and cancel the podcast for saying that.
Though. Yeah. We're like first line practitioners, so we can make a big difference in people's outcomes. And it's probably something, I might touch on it now anyway, it's probably something, and this is not against GPs at all, they do a great job, but I think people really need to understand that physios can do a lot. And in terms of any kind of musculoskeletal issue, I think should be that first line of contact, because, they can get the ball rolling with management a lot quicker. A lot of the times the GPs will be like, okay, you need to go see your physio.
Exactly.
And that's just, that might take a week, it might take 2 weeks, and then really you're behind the 8 ball already. So
it's funny because, and in reference to what you're saying, like my brother's gone from exercise phys to he's now a doctor.
Yeah.
And he's working rurally out in the bush, and we're having a good chat about it in that he said, mate, the amount of people that need so much more help than the person with the sore knee or the sore back. And so you become quite dismissive of musculoskeletal issues because you go, it's just the musculoskeletal issue. And I've got a diabetic, I've got hypertension, I've got these 15 people waiting in the waiting room that could turn around, keel over and die in any moment. And then a lot of people feel dismissed about their pain or their symptoms or whatever the problem is. And, and then they stand and want to criticize a doctor, and it's like, from an empathetic lens, it's like they actually have a lot more to deal with because there is so many people unwell. And, he was talking about it in the bush. The active farmer, for example, that, has a suboptimal diet but a really active lifestyle suddenly has a meniscus issue or a bit of a, ligament issue in their knee, and they need to get seen by the right surgeon to have that cleaned out. There's an 18-month waiting list. That 18 months sees them move less and gain upwards of 10 to 15 kilos. Suddenly they've got hypertension or pre-diabetes, and we don't care about that sore knee anymore. No. We're really worried about all these other health metrics that are slipping away. And before you know it, the very thing that started it is disregarded, and now we're just worrying about keeping them alive, and they're really unwell. And that's sort of the series of sort of circumstances that I think a lot of people slip into. And that's where, in reference to what you're saying, that first line of defense, if you've got back pain, if you've got something that's limiting you from moving or making you, hold back from doing a bit more exercise, go and get it dealt with by a physio, because it is there and then in your early 40s that might determine how active and happy and healthy you are into your 50s, 60s and 70s. Yeah. So it's underappreciated, I think, because it's just a sore knee or it's just an injury, but it actually will have a lot of effect on how you approach particularly physical activity in life. In terms of your physio career in the last sort of 4 years, what would you say to yourself when you graduated that you know now as a practitioner than, compared to when you finish uni and going, right, I'm ready to go?
Yeah, there's lots to learn. It was very daunting. And then that, like, obviously that first 6 months is tough, and you are thrown into the deep end. And I'll openly admit there was a lot of things that came to me where I was like, man, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And then almost after that kind of 6 months, you go, oh, hey, I know it all. And you kind of go, yeah, there's that illusion that, yeah, I'm the best. I know I can treat anything, blah, blah, blah.
Because you have a couple of wins, a couple of good patient outcomes.
Yeah. And then I think the tip is just to keep learning. Like, there's always more. You can always be better. And that's probably part of the reason as well, like, not exploring that medical route yet, because I know there's so much more I can get out of physio. There's so much more to learn. And I think of like something like running, which I've been probably investing a lot of time and effort into building my skills there. I haven't even, like, there's so much more that I can learn in that space.
Yeah.
And then there's so much more as well in the general, physio realm in terms of musculoskeletal conditions. Like some therapists just treat, wrists, or just treat hands or shoulders, and
they specialize
in that. So, there's always more to learn. So I think just don't fall into the trap thinking, okay, cool, I've got through that tough little early part of my career. I'm good for now.
Yeah. Don't sort of get complacent with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite funny because, you get a few good results and a few good outcomes and a few patients pump your tires up and you go, yep, I'm the man. But at the same time, how important is that confidence as a practitioner to go, look, diagnostically, I'm thinking this, process out is this, adhere to it. There's a big psychological element to injury and pain. How much have you seen sort of going, hey, I'm confident that these are the outcomes, these are the metrics you need to hit to get the outcome you want?
I think it definitely leads to better engagement with, or like patients engaging with what you're saying. I think looking back, talking to a patient, I'll be like, oh, I think this, or I think that.
That hesitation.
That hesitation. People can pick up on it. And I think even if you're not 100% sure, I think you just got to have that confidence. And I always like to treat, what are they presenting with? What are their complaints? How can we manage that? Do we 100% get that diagnosis right? It's really hard sometimes. So if you can go, oh, hey, you've got knee pain, for example, and there is a deficit in your cause on that side, then straight away you go, okay, well, we're going to work on that. Do we know exactly what's causing that knee pain? There might be a couple of working diagnoses. But if you give them a plan and you're confident about it and you tell them why you're doing it, they'll most likely engage with it.
Yeah. And that's often the case, is probably, particularly in the running realm, where people are suddenly getting a knee type issue or a hip or Achilles is a classic. And they're going, why? Why is this breakdown? And it's as logical as some of those musculoskeletal size or strength deficits. How important, and I guess what are the main factors that you try and implement to make sure people adhere to the necessities of improving an injury?
In terms of the running space, you've got to get them doing something. I think, there's some cases where you can't get people running, particularly like nasty bone stress injuries, but a lot of the times you can get them doing something. And I think people are more likely to adhere to a program if they've got something to keep them going. So it might be just, oh, hey, you're getting sore at 5Ks into your run, but you're able to manage the first like 3 or 4Ks. So we'll drop your running load, we'll get you doing 3Ks easy. And then you're working on all the other stuff that we set. They're more likely to adhere to that, instead of you going, hey, we just got to completely rest, no running, running's bad for you.
Yeah.
You got to work on this physio stuff. And a lot of the times that doesn't work anyway. But, people, as soon as you say no running, they switch off.
Yeah.
So in the cases where they're not allowed to run, you have to be really good with your communication there and explain why. But a lot of times you just got to keep them doing something.
Yeah, because it's as you said, there's such a psychological element in terms of their confidence and their ability to feel okay and doing the right thing and being active.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite the challenge in terms of physio as a practice and its approach to running related musculoskeletal related injuries. How much has it moved, particularly in just what you've seen the last couple of years from studying into practicing, from hands-on treatment, a little bit of band work, to full-blown you need to do actual strengthening work and movement mechanics type work?
I think a lot of people are aware of it now, and whether that's social media, every second person's harping on about you got to do strength work, and people will come in to see me and go, hey, I've got this issue. I know I'm not doing my strength work, and they can recognize that, which is a good sign. It's very tricky, and you gotta pick the right dosage for the right person too. So not everyone. Look, it'd be great if everyone can do heavy resistance stuff. But not everyone will. So I still think there is a place for some of the banded work, and I still definitely think there's a role in hands-on. But I definitely think people are just more aware of doing strength training, and a lot of runners I'm seeing are doing 1, 2, 3 days a week of strength training. Whether they're doing the right things, that's definitely my job to figure that out. But majority of people are doing, I know, some form of calf raises, some form of like squatting, kind of hip thrust, that kind of thing. So there is definitely more awareness out there. But I reckon we shouldn't discount hands-on and band work.
Yeah, absolutely. What are the wrong things that people are coming in and doing that come to mind?
Well, like particularly like calf raises is a big thing that I see, where they go, hey, they got an Achilles issue, and I go, are you doing any calf work? And they said, yeah, I've got really strong calves, and I look and they can do 10 bodyweight calf raises, and I go, that's fine. I add a little bit of resistance there, and it's no good.
Falls to pieces.
So weight is your friend, and progressive overload. Running, it places a massive demand on the body. So you got to be doing more than body weight in terms of your calf raises.
In your strength training.
In your strength training. So calves are a high risk area. Interestingly enough, I was looking at something, and it was like that transition from walking to running and the loads that it places on the body. So walking to running for Achilles and hip, it probably doubles. Whereas for the knees, it's quadruples. So it's quite a large difference from walking to running for knees. So definitely doing some kind of quad work as well, I think, is super important for people.
How influences actual running mechanics? How influential is the running mechanics on those load profiles?
I think for knees, it's the biggest thing. I see people can make the biggest difference in their symptoms with knee pain with a change in gait. So the big things is cadence is the number one thing. Regardless of where your issue is in your body, a 10% increase in cadence is massive. So I can get someone out there and go, okay, again, this is not everyone, but a lot of people you go, hey, I've got 6, 7 out of 10 knee pain. You increase their cadence, get them landing a little bit more underneath their hips, and that pain will massively reduce, and they'll notice it straight away. You see someone with like an Achilles issue or maybe a hip issue, you may not notice that difference in that session. It'll be more of a working progress. It still doesn't mean it doesn't work. But with knees, you see a massive
just straight away. Talk us through why that occurs.
Well, a lot of the times it's like an overstride. That's the number one thing I'll see. So we look for, people are quick to say heel striking's bad. Not necessarily, but I'll usually see it paired with an overstride. So it's kind of distance of where that foot's landing away from the body. It's the angle of that tibia. So I look for, I want it to be more vertical. And then vertical oscillation as well. So they're the big three things that I look for. If they've got components of that, it's likely an overstride. And really just massively increasing the force, particularly shin and knee. They're the big areas that will cop it. So if you go, okay, we're going to increase your cadence by 10%, more steps, they're going to be shorter steps. I try and cue them to land underneath their hips. And again, you just bringing that leg closer to your body, so you're reducing the amount of force going through that patellofemoral joint in particular.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so funny once you do look at it, because you look at the literature on heel versus forefoot striking, and the only time it really causes big problems is when you try and change it.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, again, if you take your shoes off and go and run, you're going to probably not land with a heel strike. But we've probably spent our entire lives growing up with shoes on, and therefore when there's a footwear on and generally a bit of cushioning, a bit of a heel elevation, you're going to be a little bit more inclined to land on your heel.
Yep.
So we're going to be pretty well trained at having a bit more of a heel strike.
Yeah.
But it's that foot in relation to center of mass, that leg out in front of you, as opposed to landing underneath you, as you said. That's really interesting, though, that's sort of such an influential mechanism on knee pain, and it checks out, right? It makes so much sense.
It is the number one thing. So not necessarily.
Anecdotally, I mean, we're not.
Yeah.
You can go into the literature and there's nuance upon nuance upon nuance. But
there was an interesting thing that I was reading, and it's really about shifting load from a structure. So if you look at knees, for example, the number one thing, or the thing that increases knee load the most, is running downhill on like a 5% grade.
And you can feel that, right?
Yeah.
You can see it in people.
100%. And on the flip side, though, about a 30% reduction knee loading with a 5% incline. So that's something else I'll get knee pain patients doing, particularly if I want to keep them running, is put them on a 5% grade on a treadmill. And a lot of the times it's a 30% reduction. So it's more than that cadence, 10% cadence increase they found. So you pair a 10% cadence increase with a 5% incline on a treadmill, and you are massively reducing knee forces
that knee stress. And would that sit similarly with shin splints or shin pain, or is it a bit more technical?
I definitely think the overstride thing's a factor. So like heel strike away from the body, again, it's shins and knees that I'll see it. So any shin pain patient, any knee pain patient will usually have that. So I focus more cadence. So running uphill does increase kind of plantar flexor force, which in turn will increase pressure through the shins there.
Yeah.
So uphill running not as recommended
for a shin splint
for
type.
a shin splint, but for cadence increase is definitely recommended.
Yeah. It's funny. It's and you see it so many times in people with the best of intentions, and they try and increase their speed, and then they're trying to reach a little bit more, and ultimately it just has a hindrance on both actual speed, as well as then joint stress.
I think people go, okay, I want to move forward, so I'm going to drive forward. So they'll stride out because they're trying to move forward. One of the another good cue that I like to use is go, okay, slight forward lean, so your body's going forward and your legs are going back. So I think pull your legs back, move your body forward, and that usually gets people a little bit more underneath their hips and that kind of proper mechanics.
Yeah, and getting to those mechanics. How different is it in terms of your long, slow distance recreational runner versus the athlete that you might see in terms of treatment? Like, are you seeing less knee type issues with the high speed interval sort of running athlete, say an AFL player, versus maybe the long, slow distance person?
I think everyone falls into that trap.
Regardless of sort of speed or sport or...
Yeah, but I think those high-level athletes, particularly the better high-level runners, they're more conditioned. So it's probably something I got obsessed with at the start, was changing everyone's mechanics to that textbook running form, but you don't have to. Yeah. And the research coming out is, you're basically just shifting load from one area to another.
Okay.
So if you've got a really seasoned athlete, who's doing 100 to 130 Ks a week, hasn't had any injuries, there's not really a point in changing their running technique, even if it doesn't look textbook, because their body's conditioned to how they're running. If they've come in with an injury, sure. If they've got an Achilles injury
and it's an overuse-based
thing, then we'll temporarily change their gait a little bit or modify a few factors to allow them to keep running, and then slowly shift them back to what they feel more comfortable with after addressing, maybe it's a calf strength deficit, hip strength deficit, etc. And then I mean, your field-based athletes, they've got all kinds of things going on.
Yeah.
Running's probably something that a lot of field-based athletes don't really focus on. I know playing AFL, not once do they do any form of run mechanic or run technique sessions. So, they'll have all kinds of things going on. I think it's just that disparity between the really elite runners and the people maybe just getting into it. The elite ones, I wouldn't change too much with them unless it's really indicated.
Yeah. Don't fix what isn't broken, kind of thing.
Yeah.
In terms of your own injuries and niggles and that sort of thing, how's that shaped the way you approach treating people?
Probably patience.
Yeah.
I was talking to you before, like I've got osteitis pubis at the moment. And that was from me doing all kinds of stupid stuff. I went from not doing a lot of sprinting to doing, 4 or 5 sprint sessions a week.
Oh my goodness.
Because I was just obsessed with trying to get fast. So I had a competition over in the US playing flag football. So it's the newest Olympic sport. So lucky enough to be in the Oz Olympic team. And, I was like, man, I was already fast, but I'm like, I've really got to work on this. So every day nearly I was just doing sprinting and felt good for a little bit. And then, symptoms started to build to the point where, it got really nasty. Played through it, was horrible. And I came back after the US tour and basically couldn't get out of bed, couldn't twist, hurt to cough, sneeze. It was nasty. And I was still under the impression that, hey, this will get better quickly. I'll do the right things.
I'm a physio. I know what to do.
And it's been 5.5 months now. And I have been very impatient at times along the process. But now it's just getting to the point where I'm like, I've just got to trust it. I know it's going to take some time. I can't rush back into things. And that's probably helped me manage some of those kind of longer term people in clinic as well, where they've got something similar or something that's going to take a while. In the past, I'd be like, after a little bit, I'm like, what's going on? Why aren't you getting better? I start to freak out a little bit.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, hey, this is going to take some time. We'll take the little wins. We'll keep progressing here. Obviously if things aren't getting better or it's getting worse, then we'll look at other options. But sometimes it's just patience.
Hurry up and wait kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's and it's funny, and OP is such a classic example as an injury in that it's not acute. It sort of gradually comes on, and you can get away with, it's sore, but it's fine. It's sore, but it's fine, and then suddenly it's not. Yeah. For those that don't really understand why, why is it so painful? Why does it take so long to recover?
So, it's inflammation, maybe it's bone stress. They're unsure, like just in general with that osteitis pubis diagnosis, but that pubic symphysis is where your kind of abdominal muscles and your adductor muscles meet, which is quite a central spot. So if you think, you use your core for everything, and same thing, like you don't realize how much you use your adductors as well.
Well, it's sort of the second biggest force producer in terms of like max velocity running and sprinting and hip extension movements.
Exactly. And, it's funny when you hurt something and you realize, hey, I actually use this muscle a lot day to day. I don't feel it usually.
I took it for granted.
Yeah. And so I have more abdominal symptoms. So coughing, sneezing, bracing, sitting up, they were all really nasty for me. Less adductor symptoms, which was interesting. I've always had really tight adductors, and I've had previous scans which showed some OP stuff. I have never really been symptomatic. The occasional kind of groin little niggle, and that went away. And then so ended up getting some imaging done on it before I went to the US, and didn't look very pretty in there.
Nice.
Really nasty adductor tendon tear and advanced kind of breakdown, particularly on that problem side. It's just an area of high use and high load. I use it with most movements, so you've really got to. It's almost like you got to treat it like a bone stress injury, where you just got to massively deload that and then slowly build that capacity back up
and build that tolerance. Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's and it happens so often, and it often pops up as people think it might be a herniation or an abdominal strain, and because I guess the symptomatically the pain can be somewhat global in and around the pelvis.
Yeah.
It can be really quite confusing.
Well, I thought it was like an abdominal tendinopathy to start with, or like a psoas kind of issue, because I was like, oh, well, it's not adductor stuff, so it can't be OP. And then the more and more it kind of progressed, the more I was like, yeah, this is heading down a
very
nasty
OP
path.
like path. Yeah. What are the flags that you see? Biggest red flags that you see in terms of the way people approach their running recovery, and then their rehab within that when there is an injury.
I feel just in general, I had someone in last night with some knee pain, and people get stuck in that cycle where my knee hurts, so I'm going to rest. I'm going to stop going to the gym. I'm going to stop running. I'm going to leave it for a month, and it should be better. And that's probably when they come and see me, is they try and run again and it's still sore. People get stuck in that trap where things hurt, I'm going to completely rest it. So you probably, to start with, had some kind of weakness or deficit, and by resting it, you're just
emphasizing.
You're just deloading it more. And then the more it's deloaded, probably the more it's going to hurt. And then you get stuck in that cycle. So there's definitely conditions where rest is super important, like the bone stress stuff. But a lot of the times, and this is why it's important to see someone about it, is, you've got to be doing something. And, for the knee pain example, like squatting sucked, squatting was really painful. Leg extensions were a little bit sore. But we did like some modified like Spanish squat kind of stuff. So still getting some quad loading there. You can sometimes do like some modified leg extension holds, just to try and get some quad loading going. So there's always an alternative to load that area up. So I think people should, definitely seek advice when they're getting some pain, and don't resort to just resting it.
Nothing, yeah.
There are some things, little niggles and runners are aware of that. They just go away, and that's fine. But yeah, definitely seek help with that stuff. And then in terms of recovery, I guess post-event, people are very quick to get back into their running. So there's a lot of good research coming out at the moment about how long it takes for your body to recover, post an ultra marathon or post a marathon. It takes weeks.
Yeah.
And people are quick to, a couple of days after are out doing some runs. Doesn't mean you can't, but you've just got to be really careful.
Yeah.
I fell into that trap last year. I did an ultra and I kept running afterwards, went back to flag football straight away, and I had like a femoral stressy.
Oh, wow.
Come on after that. So
yeah, nice.
Yeah, I think just take rest after that marathon, take some time. Maybe you'll lose a little bit of fitness, but you'll get it back pretty quickly.
Yeah. And, and I often say that to people is you've proven that you can do it, and you can do the training necessary to get to that outcome that you're chasing. Be prepared just to step back a little bit and just let your body have a moment of just sort of decompression. And mostly psychologically, I think, is the other one for a lot of people.
What's like marathon training or any training in general, it's quite taxing on the body, and particularly when you're getting towards the end where you're doing lots of long runs, there's lots of volume in your weeks. You're probably, I know a lot of people aren't good with their fueling. You're probably under fueling to a degree. So there is high fatigue levels, and then that emotional stress of marathon day or race day where you're just super amped up and stressed, and you get through there and you just broke down, and it's tough. It's a big day and it's a big training block. So give yourself some time mentally to recover as well.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, though, people tend to run really good times post, like say they do a marathon on a Sunday. A lot of the times they'll pull out a really fast 5 or 10K that next week.
Wow, yeah.
And I haven't looked too much into why that is. Maybe because you are, like, if your body's recovered well enough, like, you are in that peak fitness.
Yeah, you're sort of still on that deloaded or taper sort of mechanism that you've probably taken into that marathon.
Yeah. Phil Gore was a great example this year. He broke the record for the Backyard Ultra, and he ran for like 5 days straight.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that weekend, he did New Farm Park run in under 18 minutes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so he's a machine. So
Yeah.
people are capable of doing some crazy things.
Yeah, totally. How often do people get caught up in that though? You know, they see these extreme examples of these epic athletes do some incredible things and they go, righto, my turn. I mean, it keeps you in a job really sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely does. But they're even like the like Ned Brockman stuff, people taking on these big crazy challenges. People want to do more and more. So people aren't satisfied with a half marathon or a marathon anymore.
Yeah.
They go straight into, I want to do an ultra.
Yeah.
And they do an
5
ultra.
years ago when people were running marathons, I was like, awesome.
Yeah.
Now it's like normal. And most people are running ultras.
It's crazy. And you keep doing more and more. And the next thing you know, you want to run across the country or you want to, run from Brisbane to Sydney or Brisbane to Melbourne. I don't know. Do something along those lines. And it's great. It's something to train for. But people have got to respect that as well, where they go, hey, like the people doing this stuff have been running for a long time. Someone like a Timmy who ran around the world or Sean Bell who ran around the country, there's a lot of years of training and conditioning going into this. You can't just wake up one day and go, hey, I want to run, stupidly far.
Yeah, you're not Forrest Gump.
No.
It was just a movie.
No. And there's always those freak athletes that can do it and are conditioned to do it, but it's just, you got to take your time. If you want to do that, cool. Take your time. It might take you a few years to build up that chronic load. Yeah,
and that sort of capacity. Yeah, I like to think of myself as a very boring fit person in that 12Ks, I'm happy with that.
That's great.
If maybe I'll get out to a half marathon, but maybe one day a marathon. But like the other part for me is there's so many other mechanisms of training that I'm into as well. Like we do some really hard stuff downstairs, or I'll do a lot of strength training or gymnastic stuff. And it's also understanding that if I'm gonna go and run more than a half, even doing a half, I got to let go my strength and my gymnastics and be prepared to not be so good at that stuff so I can then go and handle.
That's been the hard thing for me as well, like playing footy and then wanting to do some distance running. And that's probably, I'm not a spectacular distance runner by all means. But like if I really wanted to focus on my distance running and go, hey, I really want to do, a marathon in the 2-hour range, or, I want to do a half for an hour 20 or something like that, which is like, it's okay. But I know I have to put that training in and, I have to get into those 100K weeks, and I've just never been able to because, I've got 3 trainings or 2 trainings in a game of AFL and maybe some flag football. And then this year it's been, flag. And, I just don't have that time to do both. And that's probably partly where the injury came to, where I'm doing 50, 60 Ks a week of running, and then I'm doing 4 or 5 sprint sessions, complete polar opposites. And it's just trying to find, like, if you want to be a good runner, you probably just got to focus completely on it. And like my mate who I did the podcast with, he's like completely focused on his running. Doesn't play any AFL anymore. He's running his 100K weeks. He's getting really, really good results there. And I've just never been able to kind of keep up in that sense because I'm always doing something else. And I think following this injury, touch wood, when I recover, I will probably just have to focus on, just the sprinting strength stuff for a bit.
Because that's what you're doing.
That's what I'm doing.
Let the main thing be the main thing.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice for anyone as well. And it's a question I get asked a lot is, how do I balance my sport and my distance running? And it's like,
you don't.
Well, you're not going to get good at either. You're not going to get elite at either of them. You can be good at both, but you've got to kind of pick one. And maybe in the off season, you go, okay, AFL season finishes in September. From September to February, I'm just going to put a good distance block in and, build some fitness. And then maybe I maintain that a little bit through my AFL season.
Yeah, your capacity moves a little bit. That bell curve moves up a little bit further. You can handle a bit more distance.
But you've got to pick what you want to be good at, because there's the distance running and like field-based strength stuff. It's just, they're on the opposite side of the spectrum.
Totally. It's funny. And so how influential, in terms of causing problems, if you will, has the Hyrox type CrossFit thing where people are doing these hectic strength type modalities and then going into this endurance stuff. Again, like I like to say it, jack of all, master of none.
Yeah.
I'm reasonably strong, maybe just above the norm.
Yeah.
I'm reasonably good at gymnastics, maybe just above the norm.
Yeah.
I'm reasonably okay at running, just above the norm. But I'm not going to run. I'd love to say I can run a sub 20-minute 5K,
Yeah.
but I know I've got to go backwards in those other two before I go there. How often do you see people coming in trying to tick all three boxes and, say a Hyrox or a hybrid athlete thing that's now on the internet influencing that?
It's tough. There are definitely people who are great at a lot of those things. It's probably the same thing where you're not going to be a master of all of them, but you can certainly be good at a few. I think the issues I see are, typically bigger bodies, great in the gym, they get into running. And again, they probably don't have that technique side of things down. They take the long strides, and then, you've got a guy with 110 kilos of muscle, that's a lot of extra force going through. And that's where I tend to see the injuries pop up. And I mean, the more muscle mass you have, you're not going to move as well. And that's a fact. You see all the elite distance runners don't have much on them.
Totally.
And it's just, again, trying to be that hybrid. You're going to find that blend where you can't maybe be that heavy. You've got to trim a little bit down, maybe lose a little bit of strength there. But on the flip side, then you build a little bit of that endurance and that speed there.
And you'll have that speed. It's even, I'm probably 4 kilos heavier than I was 18 months ago training for a half.
Yeah.
I'm a good 15 seconds per K slower.
Yeah.
Like I'm sending it on a run on a Saturday and I'm just pulling up at a 450 per K for 10 Ks going. That was like hard. I'd really thought I was going much faster than that. But it's just kind of the nature. I'm just aware of it. But I'm also lifting more than I was 18 months ago by 10 to 15 kilos. So not that it equates second to kilogram, but I like to sort of associate that.
You've got to find that blend, and that's what the elites are really good at. On the flip side too, it's people getting into the gym side of things more, and they do too much too quick. It's all load. It really loads the big thing. Nothing's going to hurt you really. Like people go, oh, bench press is bad for me or shoulder pressing is bad for me. I'm like, no, it's not. You just went a million miles an hour. Yeah. And now you've got a raging kind of rotator cuff tendinopathy. Yeah. We go, okay, let's let this settle down, drop your load a little bit. Yeah. Maybe build up a little bit of that rotator cuff strength, but we'll just gradually increase your load back with your pressing movements. Yeah. So it's taking your time. I think people are obsessed. They see things on the internet. They see these ripped jack dudes doing all these cool things. And go, I want to get there as quick as possible and go to the gym 7 days a week and lift really heavy weights. And that's when the issues start to pop up. It's got to take time. It does. Yeah. Well, mate, staying on the internet because, I think it's a big thing that you guys have done really well is, I guess, the attempt to manage expectations. Yeah. At the end of the day, we're always going to look at that short little bit of information that promises us the world. Yeah. But ultimately, we probably can't handle it, and the body breaks down. Was that sort of something you set out to communicate to people when you started the podcast and the page on Instagram, like intentionally, or were you like, let's just have a laugh to make fun of a few people doing some ridiculously silly things, and then go from there? We were always a bit silly, the two of us, and I think I kind of just stumbled upon it a little bit where I made a couple of funny videos, a couple of funny memes, maybe called out a few people that I shouldn't have, but it got great engagement. And I found people actually really enjoy this stuff. I think running content was very much generic, bland, boring. It's like run slow to run fast and do these 3 exercises to help your shin splints. It was very basic, and there wasn't many pages out there having a laugh and calling some of this stuff out. And I got carried away because we started to get lots of engagement and probably went down that path of just, calling everything out. And, it's probably shifted a little bit where we just generally have a bit of a laugh about running culture in general. And someone said the other day we're like the brown cardigan of the running world where we just, post stupid stuff that we see or get sent in. And I like that. I was like, that's probably where my focus has shifted a little bit where I'm like, running's so bland and boring, and it can be. And I'm like, I just want to have a bit of a laugh and make some funny content. And probably shifted away from that being at the expense of other people and more just generally the running world.
Yeah.
And I found engagement still being really good, and we're still growing. So people love it.
Yeah. I mean, it's as you said, it can be so serious and so extreme. And if you're not running sub 4 minutes, per kilometer, you need to train harder. You need to do this program, and these 3 exercises will get you there. And it's like, there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
And that probably is what motivated that. I'm gonna call this out for what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much of that, because you see it a lot in all forms of social media and the internet and the way we interact with it as a species now, is, rage is a mechanism with which generates engagement. And as you said, suddenly things get watched more often. And something I'm really conscious of is like, sometimes I go, I don't agree with that at all. And I'm like, and I'll never say anything, but maybe there is a place. It's a fine balance. How do you sort of feel, okay, I need to actually say something here?
It's tricky. And at the start, I got carried away with every single thing I saw I was going to call out. And probably got to the point now where I'm really picky. Like, I pick and choose what I want to call out. And usually it's more stuff around my background with physio. It's like people selling, couch to marathon programs in 8 weeks. That stuff's really harmful.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to call that stuff out because I think it does need to be. But, if someone makes a stupid video or says some stupid things, I'm less inclined to call it out these days. And people will send stuff into me like, oh, you got to call this out. This is crap. And I go, yeah, look, I've made some stupid stuff in my time as well. So you kind of just probably matured a little bit with that side of things. And I totally own up to all the other content we made in the past. And I don't think it was necessarily bad. It was just I was almost trying to that clickbaity stuff.
Totally right. Yeah.
But then you kind of find out that the people making this dumb content or this annoying content, they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
When you meet them in real life, and I've met a lot of these people that I've called out in the past, and they're just generally good people, and they're just trying to get their own engagement there, and you just gotta look at things on social media. Like, it's not all of it's really what they're. It's tough.
But I know what you're saying, and I think it's a really important thing. And I mean, this is in health and fitness and running. Like, this is in an area that's actually pretty. I think the outcome and the influence on people is going to actually be somewhat positive, even if it might be a little bit extreme. But at the end of the day, I think far too few of us. I mean, you go on your explore feed. What does that say about you as a human being? And it's like, there's women and there's sport and there's all this stuff. And I'm like, if someone else saw this, it'd be a really horrible insight into how I've interacted on my phone. And it'd reflect really poorly on me.
Yeah, don't look at mine.
But I think a lot of us don't. You've done a degree mainly based on science. You get taught to critically think.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't critically think about a piece of content that's been put out, be it about run this certain way, do these things, and then it blows up, and then everyone argues about it over the internet. But most of the time, the person putting it out initially is going, like, I don't actually stand by this.
Yeah.
But this is going to get engagement.
Exactly. And that's what I found out. A lot of people were doing, they don't actually really believe what they were saying, or they don't really care too much. And I was the same. I'd call things out, and I'm like, do I really care that much? But hey, this is going to get people going to comment on this. They're going to share this. So, look, definitely moved away from that a little bit. But then again, I just don't think there's a lot to it either. I think you just got to take it with a grain of salt.
Exactly, and you just put a bit of filter when you're using as a consumer of content, which we ultimately all are. What are your favourite things to poke fun at within the running community that are just some of your classics?
Well, our big thing's the alpha flies in the wild at the moment.
it's my favourite. I have a good laugh every time.
People wearing super shoes for day-to-day things.
With jeans.
Yeah, and it kind of started end of last year, where we got sent a few photos, and I was at the Nike store and I saw this lady, don't want to stereotype, but probably wasn't a runner, trying on a pair of alpha flyers, and the shop attendant was like, so much cushion in these will be great for you for walking and whatever.
Goodness,
And I was like, I'm gonna hold out here, not gonna say anything. And I shared like a couple of photos, and then next thing you know it, I'm getting hundreds of messages all around the world from people taking photos of people in alpha flies, and there's so many of them. I'm like, this segment's got to stop one day, but it hasn't yet.
Yeah,
and
it's just going.
Yeah, so it ended up getting me a sponsorship with Nike. So
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
It's done well in the end. So thank you to everyone who's worn their alpha flies in the public. So keep doing it.
Keep doing it. Yeah, that's unreal. If you sort of like, let's cast your mind to some predictions for the future.
Yep.
Particularly in running. Like, where do you think running rehab and the physio space within running's heading? Like what do you think, you're seeing it evolve into? And as you said, initially consumers' understandings are, I'm probably not doing enough strength training. That's a big deal. 5 years ago, people were not saying that. So, if I look at the internet, we can say it's bad. I think it's had a positive influence in that aspect.
Definitely.
What else are you sort of thinking is coming?
There is a massive running boom, and I think a lot of companies will try and take advantage of it. They'll try and find this new niche product for runners to use. And I think we're moving a lot into that recovery space, which is a good and a bad thing. A lot of the recovery things I question.
Yeah.
But like, for example, like Nike just released the Vomero Premium, which is like 50 something mils of stack height. And they've created the shoe based on what it feel like to run on an anti-gravity treadmill. So it's meant to be like their ultimate recovery shoe. And I got a pair of them, and I actually found they're quite nice, but I go, this is not going to be the shoe for everyone. You give someone a shoe with massive stack height, and they're going to be so unstable in it.
Yeah.
So I think brands are looking for, these extremes to try and find that next big thing in the market. And I feel like I don't see where we can go next. There was that big jump with super shoes, for example, like 2016, where like the initial kind of alpha flies or the next percents came out, and it was that run 4% better, which was just groundbreaking. I don't see where we can really go next. And I think companies will just try all kinds of weird and wonderful things, and people will just keep buying it.
Yeah.
So I think people need to really make informed decisions, because prices will continue to go up. Companies will sell, these recovery slides or recovery boots for thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And will they really help? Who knows? But people will buy them.
Yeah.
So I'm just really interested to see where it goes. I'm not sure where they can find that next big jump. And I think people should just be wary of, what they're buying as well, and not to buy into the latest craze to start with.
Yeah, and all these promises that aren't probably entirely valid.
Yeah, and I think the stack height thing as well is probably something I'll quickly touch on, because I think shoes are just trying to go higher and higher and higher with that stack height.
So talk us through what stack height actually means.
Stack height's basically the height of that shoe. So like that foam base, for example.
Okay.
So you look at Hoka. Hoka's a big Hoka. You go 10, 15 years ago, no one really knew about them. And then in the last couple of years, they've just shot up to like the top of the market. Everyone wants a Hoka pair of shoes because they've got so much foam. And that's the number one thing. People come in, they go, I bought these new shoes. They're so kind of cushiony and they feel great. And then, they've got chronic ankle issues. And I go, this is not for you. I think companies are just obsessed with trying to go higher and higher and higher and higher with the stack height. And I think people just need to be wary again that, that's not necessarily the shoe for them. And I think the running shoe market will go the opposite way, where they'll reach that limit and then they'll start to reduce the stack height again.
Yeah.
So
that's funny. And I think it's true. I mean, I go back to when I was starting in the industry, end of 2011, start of 2012. People were wearing Vibrams and minimalist shoes, and they were running in them.
Mm-hmm.
And in the now, it's been a little while, 13 years since then, we're in this, like, people are running on pillows kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing, is people should definitely consult someone with footwear choices, and talking about, reducing load in the knee or an ankle, like we were talking about before. Footwear definitely makes a difference there. So you get a shoe with high drops, so that's the gap between the heel and the forefoot. A higher drop shoe is going to shift you more onto your heel, because you're going to hit that heavier cushion part first, which again is going to load up your knee a little bit more. So you get someone with knee pain, you might put them in a something like 4 to 8 mils, something a little bit more neutral. But whereas like someone with Achilles pain, if they're running in like a minimalist shoe or something with lower drop,
They're going to load that forefoot. They're going to load the calf, the Achilles.
So you're better off in something with higher drop. So
there's the individualization, right? It's like it's going to be subjective every single time.
So not every pair of shoes is going to be good for a person.
Yeah.
So I definitely think consulting someone with that is a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. What trends do you think are overhyped and destined to fade outside of the shoes?
I think. See, I love the recovery stuff, so I'm not going to rat it out.
So you're talking
like
boots, compression boots,
like
sauna,
ice bath,
yeah.
all of that. Again,
but you think it's going to fade out? Came to mind.
Yeah, I think people are obsessed with the boots at the moment. I find they only really work if you've done something stupidly long, like a marathon or a half marathon, where your legs are just super heavy and fatigued. That's when I do notice a difference. I think a lot of people, and I've got in trouble for saying this in the past, but a lot of people probably just don't benefit from them if they've just put them on every day.
Yeah.
There's certain medical conditions like that lymphatic drainage kind of stuff, super important, and it can help. But I think everyone's obsessed with getting a pair of recovery boots at the moment.
Yeah.
I think that'll probably drift off a little bit.
Yeah, you got to get some load into the system before it actually requires that level of recovery.
Yeah. The maximalist shoes, I think they'll start to fade away again a little bit. I think the barefoot running craze will come back a little bit, unfortunately. They're all crazy. And then you're a barefoot runner?
Mate, it's really funny. We probably, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago now, I was like, evolutionary, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh my God, look at the load on the knee.
Yeah.
If you were look at the running related injuries from, and then you go and you just, and I had to eat the humble pie when I jumped online and I looked up, does heel strike increase injury? No, it increases impact, but more at the knee. And then if you forefoot strike, it increases injury risk at the Achilles. And I was just like, all this, it actually doesn't matter.
It's load. Again, it's
load, right?
It's
exactly.
Conditioning your body to handle what you want to do.
Yeah.
Not all barefoot runners are like this, but I feel like the ones that are really passionate about it are very extremist.
Totally. It's like it's literally like politics. It's like it's a spectrum, and the loudest voices tend to sit on the extreme ends, and everyone in the middle kind of is a bit quiet because it is a little bit like depends.
If someone came into me and said I'm a barefoot runner or I run in minimalist shoes and they didn't really have any issues, I'd be like, cool. I'm going to laugh at you probably, but like that's fine. Like it's working for you. I'm not going to change it. Look, maybe we look at conditioning your calves a little bit more and your foot and ankle. But it's the people who go screaming from the rooftops. They're like, if you're not in barefoot shoes, you're a terrible person. You're missing out on all of these benefits. So look, I'm not going to judge you for wearing them if it works for you. But again, I just think, some of them are a little bit extreme.
Totally. And it's naive to say that it works for everyone else.
Well, it just doesn't. That's the thing. Yeah.
It's so funny. So, I was like into it, but I was like, I better go double check. And I was like, no, like you just can't be, you can't die on your hill about this sort of stuff because it is always so subjective.
I think one other little thing I touch on in terms of like trends, I think some people in the physio space as well are becoming very absolutist.
Okay.
And basing a lot of their things on research, which this sounds bad, but I think there's definitely a role for research and all the evidence-based practice, but I also think we shouldn't throw out everything because there's just like the research, you don't find research papers where it works for 100% of people. There's always going to be those people that it doesn't work for. And you got to have those other skills to try. And, people are very quick to throw out hands-on stuff.
Yeah.
I tend to do a lot of it in clinic and I find it really works. Like if you, I had someone in last night and, had some kind of SIJ pain and, is racing on the weekend. And I go, look, strength, great. We could probably work on a little bit before then, but it's not really going to do anything. Did a good kind of release session around that hip and really reduce symptoms with hopping and running and those kinds of things. So I think sometimes like strength, great, but you've got to do some of that hands-on stuff, and you've got to have the skills to be, hey, I'm going to I know how to mobilize this hip, or I know how to release this area, because it still really does help.
Yeah, even though the evidence might say, oh, it actually doesn't do anything in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we've got to put that on the side. I've got a human being in front of me that will respond well in a temporary, sort of situation, so that they can actually go and do what they intended to come and do.
Exactly.
And that's that practitioner lens, and it's so important, right? You can't die on the hill of research either. It's like, you've got your one extreme end of, the soft cushioned shoe with stability, the barefoot runner extreme ends, and the research end as well. It's like, we can't be convinced about everything.
And interesting, like isometrics are a big thing at the moment.
Yeah.
So when those isometrics kind of first came out, it was a fix for all tendon pain. And it's constantly evolving. So like there's a Berlin method at the moment, which is like really high intensity, short duration holds. And that's the latest best practice for certain things. For like patella tendon stuff, it's still, kind of 5 by 45 seconds. So it's the longer stuff. But then sometimes I'll find like someone who's really sensitive, I get them doing kind of 2-minute holds. So it really just depends, and that research is ever evolving. And now there's stuff coming out saying that isometrics sometimes just don't work at all. And you got to do slow, heavy stuff. And I think it's just having all those different tools in your toolkit to adapt. So if isometrics don't work for someone, you've got something else you can try. And if you've thrown all those other skills out, then you're kind of stuck.
Exactly. And and it's funny from the patient end of the spectrum as well. Like, I deal with people, and not that I treat people for injuries, but a lot of the time when people are trying to work on something movement wise or some sort of chronic issue that they might have, it's really funny where it's like, we got to try this and it may not work. And it's really hard to sell that to someone, to say, if it doesn't, we'll only know in maybe a month or 6 weeks time, and then we'll just pivot a little bit and we'll go down this spectrum. But we can kind of tick that box and say, yes, okay. But how you respond, I can't tell until we try. You don't know if you go, and sometimes it's not just one session. Did it work? Yes, no, maybe. It's sort of always going to be evolving.
And you got to consider other aspects, like the person's general health as well. Like I had one lady who had really kind of raging kind of Achilles tendon issues, and we tried a bit of load stuff and it didn't really work. And then we modified, a bit of like, again, you've got to be careful with your like scope of practice, but advised on some like dietary changes. And I've said, let's just go for a walk 20 minutes a day. And it improved.
Yeah.
Because it definitely is a metabolic aspect of things. And sometimes things just get better without, I gave this one guy the best set of like Achilles loading stuff. His Achilles was so cranky, came in the next week. He goes, man, I feel so much better. And I said, how do you go with the exercise? He goes, I didn't do them. And I go, but it's better. So sometimes,
we'll take the win.
Yeah. So it's random. So
yeah. How much of that sort of, as you just touched on dietary wise, that sort of multifactorial elements do you sort of go, listen, like here's the Achilles stuff and you're doing this right, but what about these other factors psychologically, stress, like, neural stress, cognitive stress at work, relationship stress, if you will, and then even the dietary side, do you sort of go, okay, I need to work with someone else to touch on?
Dietary side is really important. Relative energy deficiency stuff with particularly bone stress and more prevalent in females. So I am pretty quick to refer to dietitian for that. I can definitely advise on it and say, look, I ask the questions as well, have you been feeling well, those kinds of things. And, if they go, or if I'm suspicious of it, I go, hey, it might not be a bad idea to chat to, such and such. And I can give them a heads up about what's going on, and they can, have a look at your fueling and see if they can help out there. So I think diet's a super, super important one. And then kind of sleep's something that's very, it's neglected. A lot of people I see as well just have really high stress jobs. And I always ask about those things when I'm talking to someone, where I go, why is it extra sore today or extra sore this week? Have you been stressed at work? Have you been getting regular sleep? What's your eating been like? And one guy might go, oh, I had a big weekend on the beers, or I've been having a few extra beers after work because I've been stressed, stuff like that. And it correlates with a little bit of an increase in their symptoms. So, again, you can't really, it might not be the exact factor, but stuff like that, it does commonly lead to an increase in pain. So I am quick to refer on to someone. I try my best to advise them on why.
Yeah.
And I think definitely we've got to look at those factors when people come in, particularly athletes with pain. One interesting story is someone who used to work with like at our clinic had a really kind of raging hamstring or chronic hamstring tendinopathy triathlete, and we're looking. The boss was having a look at why is it still going on, and they had a look at diet, and then was eating like a ton of ice cream every night.
Wow.
Would go through like a tub of ice cream.
Yeah.
Just because they were training so much, but massive kind of inflammatory factor there. Cut that out and symptoms improved.
Yeah.
So again, you can't exactly correlate
Yeah,
that. But
ice cream equals hamstring tendinopathy. We'll clip that up and put that. That'll go viral, mate.
Yeah, but
it's
stuff
still
like
associated,
that,
right? Yeah.
It's important to address those factors as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a major, I think, point that a lot of people need to understand is that it's not just one thing, and just doing the right Achilles loading, program for rehab may not get you there because of these other factors.
There's a ton of other factors,
and it happens. In terms of tech's influence, and how much more it's going to have an influence. Like I look at Strava 5 years ago, there were a few people on it. Now it's one of the biggest
it's massive
apps going. How do you see tech influencing running particularly positively, and also physio? And then how do you see it? This is not worth worrying about.
Strava is a good and bad thing. People are obsessed with how they look on Strava. And I think it's very much like a body image thing on social media, where people go on Strava, they go, I'm not running far enough, I'm not running fast enough. They might hide their runs, or they might increase their pace in their runs purely to have a good looking time on Strava for 5 people to give them kudos. So but I definitely think it's a big thing.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've done in the past too, where I go, nah, I've got to be under the 5-minute Ks, or under the 6-minute Ks, or under the 4-minute Ks. I've got to increase my pace here a little bit. And that's, that's an increase in load. And that's where you might overstride a little bit. And that's where little things start to accrue and turn into a bigger problem. Strava can be negative in that sense, but then also it's just great to see so many people on there and moving, and generally people are quite supportive on there, giving kudos, commenting. If you've had a good marathon, heaps of people leave comments, so it's good in that sense. The other thing is like all the new tech in terms of measuring strength, the valve stuff. We're getting some in finally now, which is exciting. I've managed to kind of make do. I had like a handheld dyno that I'd play around with, but that's the trap as well, is sometimes people get caught up too much in that the tech side of things. I definitely think it's super important, and it's a good way for people to engage with physio and go, oh, hey, look, my quad's weaker on this side, or my calf's weaker here, or I'm in the 40th percentile. And people, okay, I've got something measurable to work on. Yeah. But then sometimes I think clinicians can get too hung up on it, and is it really necessary all the time? So I feel like we've been able to get good outcomes without the technology.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And it's funny listening to a lot of people talk about it too, where they there's the like tendon guy Jake Tura who doesn't use it at all and is getting good outcomes with patellar tendon cases. And he mentioned, he goes, is it really necessary?
That's a good question for anyone to ask, right?
Yeah, I see enough positives with it. Yeah. And I think it is definitely a good kind of outcome measure to track. Yeah. But also don't get hung up if you don't have it. There's definitely ways to still improve a person and set good outcome measures without the technology. So
it's really funny. Like I'll have people that I'll test, and I actually wrote in our sort of mailing list that we send out once a week. And I tested 2 people, and one person had been training, for 2 months and then tested at the start, 4 weeks in, 8 weeks in, and they'd had all these newbie gains. It's 30% improvement upon 30% improvement for a hop test and a jump test, and looks amazing. And then had this other person who, both of these individuals were in their 60s, both very healthy.
Yeah.
But the one guy had trained his whole life, and so tested once, had maybe a 9% improvement on the second test 4 weeks later, and then a 5% drop on the third test 4 weeks later again. And I was like, how I changed the narrative for each individual. I was like, this is really interesting in that the person did really well. I'm like, oh, you've been doing your homework, you've been doing your program, high five, great. The other person who literally doesn't miss a session, every rep is meticulous, everything's but just didn't get better. And I was like, oh, it's okay, you've had a big training week. Like your data's not always going to be that good, but it's sort of, I like it particularly for that person that, is struggling potentially psychologically with an injury, and then they see a improvement and you go, yeah, you're getting better. Great. Like everybody's winning. And then psychologically they might feel a bit better. They're going to adhere to the rest protocol or the loading protocol that's been prescribed. But at the same time, I've also seen it where the data doesn't give you the information you think or you want it to give you. And you got to go, oh, don't worry. Like it's going to be okay.
Well, you just got to have those skills, because the data, physios, like all kinds of like the clinical work, it doesn't always fit the narrative. And you've got to have that adaptability to be like, okay, well, the results don't show improvement, but that's where you might look at other things where you go, oh, hey, it doesn't hurt you as much hopping out of the car, or your symptoms in the morning are less. Yeah, your strengths maybe not as, we're not seeing those numbers. Again, that could be a tester. There's so many different conditions and factors on the day that can influence those things.
Yeah.
And that's where you've just got to have that communication as well, where you go, okay, what are the other wins? What can we try and keep people going, oh, hey, I am making progress. I need to keep working on these things, just because the data doesn't match.
Doesn't check out. Doesn't mean throw the towel in. Yeah, it's pretty funny to sort of think and see. And I guess going back to the evidence side of things, to create good evidence and good literature, it actually comes down to data and comes down to data collection. Yet all these factors, need to be considered. And I think it's where it's really hard to collect effective rehab or effective training data is we can't say, hey, here's a couple of pills. This one's a placebo and you're going to take a placebo. This one's a placebo, but you think you're taking the trial. And so it sort of goes. And that's really easy to study and create some robust data on in terms of like pharmacological interventions. Very hard. It's like if you're doing squats, you're doing squats. You can't really exercise or control with that. So it sort of becomes retrospective in the findings.
And it's interesting, like some of the research coming out about how, queuing and perfect exercise isn't a thing. And, Adam Eakins, for example, is very much, you just got to deadlift or you just got to squat. And there's nothing wrong with that. That'll work for some people. But for me, for example, like, I've got to be really focused on those little, like pelvic tilt, core engagement, internal rotation, external rotation, all of those little things. And my pain varies a lot if I haven't, addressed those factors. And, my pain's coming on because I have some like poor patterns there. So I definitely think there's still importance. And that's that same thing where, it's not going to work for everyone. Like, an old lady who doesn't do much exercise, if I tell her to do some squats, she's probably going to benefit because it's something. It's movement that she doesn't have.
Yeah. Mechanical execution might be 30% of what you want it to be.
Yeah.
But she's moving.
And that still works for some healthy population. Like, she's healthy as well, but like the younger athletic population. But there's also some people who really need that cueing to feel certain engagement, whether that's just a psychological thing as well. But I definitely think that's another example of where the research isn't always the best thing. And you got to adapt it to the person.
So when someone comes in and they come to see me and they say, oh, I saw the physio and they said my glutes don't work.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, hang on. If they didn't work, you'll be able to stand up. Like, let's tone that down a bit. But we need to get better glute recruitment for that individual. How do you sort of communicate that? And I guess for people listening that might be in that realm, because a lot of people do struggle with glute engagement voluntary. How do you sort of work around that?
Well, it's a common thing that I see. Interesting study was in runners with patellofemoral pain, and it's common, the whole narrative that, you got weak glutes, which causes patellofemoral pain. But they did a study and they found that people with weak glutes didn't necessarily develop patellofemoral pain. It was the opposite. It was people with patellofemoral pain developed weak glutes.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, I mean, pain's a big inhibitor. So that's the theory there.
Inhibitor of what?
Of like that kind of muscle recruitment activation.
Drive,
So people with knee pain, glutes would massively reduce in that kind of strength there. So it's definitely something to consider as well. But it's often not a cause of issues. It's a response.
That's a pretty strong message. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
For a lot of particularly people running.
Yeah.
To understand.
So yes, just because you're strengthening your glutes doesn't mean you're not going to get knee pain, and a lot of times you still will. And it might be because you're doing too much load, or there's weaknesses in other parts of the chain. So I guess that narrative that strength training as well will prevent injury, we've got to be careful there.
Yeah,
it definitely will get you stronger, and I still feel like it does reduce the risk of injury. But doesn't mean it prevents it.
Yeah, it won't stop it from happening, particularly in that scheme of your load management. And if you haven't got that right, as you said, and as it sort of always comes back to, strength training is another mechanism of load.
Yeah.
And a lot of people misunderstand that. They just kind of go, okay, let's do strength training. It's going to be the cure to everything. And it's like, well, hang on.
It is just more load. It's exposing certain areas of your body to different types of load. It's building capacity to be able to handle. And it's interesting too, when you look at it, running, it's thousands and thousands of cycles. And then you go to the gym and you do 3 sets of 6 calf raises and you go, how is that conditioning me to run? Which is, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And that's why there's that importance of increasing the weight there. It's going, okay, I'm going to make sure all my reps are really high quality, so I improve the capacity of my calf to some degree. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to, reduce my, it's 1,000 cycles, 10,000 cycles with your running. It's not going to prevent any injury there. And that's why gradually increasing your running load is super important, because you're just exposing yourself to those repetitive cycles. But if you can get your calf a bit stronger with, heavy gym sets, then that's something.
Yep, and we'll take it. Yeah, it is funny. 3 sets of 30 squats is going to help your, Achilles pain. It's like, actually, when you think about it, how? And that it's just more the understanding that I think setting the expectation, having the consumer understand from an expectation perspective, because we have this luxury of working with bodies and reading the information, discussing it with other professionals all the time. If you're in an office all day working as a lawyer, you're not thinking about this stuff. You're just going, now my knee's sore. Yeah. And if you had to have the literacy to understand the mechanics, the load, the programming, the mechanism of injury, you probably wouldn't have much time to actually do your actual job. So, there's a lot more to it. But I guess to bring it home, take the social media, internet thing, take physio and running, take your own experience. If you were just to wish upon everybody to have an understanding of one message, sorry to make you try and bottle this up into one thing. Yeah. What would that be?
Patience. I that's probably the first word that comes to mind.
So patience to have patience.
Patience, yeah. Patience to have patience, because things aren't just going to happen overnight, and we've just we see all these things on social media of these high level athletes and people with big muscles and 6-packs and stuff. That just doesn't happen overnight. So, there's not 10 ab exercises to get you ripped in, 5 days. That's years and years of training. And people just get obsessed with trying to achieve things as fast as possible. And I fall into that trap as well. It's, stick to a plan, see someone that can, help guide you there. And, it's not going to be perfect all the time. I saw someone shared it on social media. They go, the best runners are the ones that, turn up consistently and, they do the really boring 20K long run that they feel crap in, and they do that week in, week out. And that's when they start to see the improvements there. it's not all kind of sunshine and
Yeah,
rainbows.
yeah. It's
So,
not that one Strava that makes you look like a superstar
Yeah.
and don't share the rest.
that's where the injury comes from.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Awesome. Well, Shayle, mate, you're doing God's work. You know, the message I think you're spreading, particularly through the Trails King stuff. You're making it fun. You're making it realistic. Setting realistic expectations, which I think is it's undervalued by the consumer because it's not what we want to hear.
Yeah.
And it goes against particularly what might motivate us, but at the end of the day, it's what we need, which is really important. So, you know, by all means, on behalf of the consumers, don't stop.
Yeah.
And then, mate, as a physio, you can see your passion and your work. I've no doubt you're looking after a lot of people. And, I'm really excited to sort of see where it all goes for you. And, please don't go chase that medicine thing, mate. Stay in the physio realm. Stay working with the bodies. I'm trying to encourage people to stay below down here.
Yeah.
But, more than anything, mate, just thanks very much for
No worries.
having the courage. Thanks so much for jumping on the podcast today.
It's
and,
exciting.
Mate, we'll have to get you back sometime.
It's different. It's been weird being on the other end.
Being
of
a
the mic.
guest.
Yeah, that's cool. No, thank you very much.
Nailed it. Cool. Thanks, mate.